Morning everybody on this really gorgeous sunny day. It's so sunny, in fact I've had to close the curtains because it's like an aura around me and you can't see my face. A week has gone again, another week in isolation, still in the spare room. I thought it might be useful today to talk a little bit about what I have been through mentally since being diagnosed in July last year. And it's been quite interesting, and from a coaching perspective, it's fascinating watching how I have been impacted and then adapted to the change and the shock that has befallen me in the last sort of 8 to 9 months. So I've mapped it out, and I think that it's certainly giving me a lot to think about in the future, is helping people that are recovering from a big shock such as I have been through. Anyway, I'm going to go through it in the timeline and just talk a little bit about what I did to help me through that phase, and hopefully it'll be useful if you're experiencing the same thing. And has to be around recovering from breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. It could be really recovering from any major shock, and it's really weird as I sit here and think about it, that the world has almost been put in the same circumstances as I am with the coronavirus. So what we're all experiencing right now around our changing environment and experience is a little bit like what I've been experiencing since diagnosis in July, which is all a bit bizarre really. Anyway, I suppose, so I was diagnosed, I have it imprinted in my brain on July the 9th, 2019. And I think for me at that time, the most immediate reaction was, of course, that of shock and disbelief. And that was the immediate reaction. And I think very quickly following that was a level of anger as well. And that, why me? Why me? What have I done to deserve this? And probably looking at past experiences in my life and blaming other things and other people for possibly why I'm in this situation. I think that's pretty normal, and it's important to acknowledge, I think, that you're feeling that way. I think at the time it was just a whole bunch of feelings and emotions that happened one after the other. In a way I was lucky because it was the end of the school year, so we were aiming to go on holiday, which I think was quite useful, because going away and not needing to work and not having to get up to do the school run was actually quite therapeutic. And I think when I went away, we went down to Newquay for 2 weeks. I kind of then went into this sort of phase of, is it something that I've done that's made this happen? Should I have eaten all that bad food? Should I have put myself through those stressful experiences? Should I have worked as hard as I have done? And during the 2 weeks that I was in Newquay, I then read a load of information. I got a load of books and tried to research the answers to that to see if it was something that I'd done. And I think it was during that 2-week break that I did actually start to grieve for my past life. And I think coming back from that holiday, I really needed to talk to somebody, I think. And in my line of work, I am surrounded by amazing coaches. And weirdly, as soon as I got back from my holiday, I did a piece of work with a very good friend of mine who is also a very good coach. And on our train journey to London, we did just that. We had the conversation I needed, and I think that was unbelievably helpful, offloading how I was feeling, because I couldn't quite understand what was going on. And we then followed that conversation up and actually still are talking to each other in that regard. And each time we do have those conversations, something really excellent comes out of that. And I think a big thing for me, having had that coaching session, was that there was a few conversations I needed to have with people around me to let them know how I was feeling, because I think sometimes I just feel like I can control all of it and just get on with it. Very quickly after that, though, I went into surgery, and so I would say then surgery brought with it another shock, which was the shock that it had spread into my lymph nodes and that chemotherapy was just a definite next treatment. So I almost went backwards again and went through a whole load of shock and disbelief and grieving again, because I didn't expect to have it spread into my lymph nodes. And it changed the future, because I thought I'd just have radiotherapy and I'll be back to work and everything will be back to normal. But this meant a much longer treatment plan. And post-surgery, it was, it was very emotional. And I think, of course, having the general anaesthetic and the whole disruption to your body, going through quite major surgery, really, it felt like it for me, almost, I think, gave that emotional reaction. And then I had, I would say, the most stressful 4 weeks of the whole time. And that was the 4 weeks from knowing that I was going to have chemo to meeting the oncologist. And those 4 weeks, I just became extremely anxious, really, really stressed, really uncertain about the future, made some really spontaneous decisions, spoke to people at work about stopping work completely, then changed my mind, did lots of reading again about what I was heading into, because I wanted to understand it, talked to lots of people about who had been through chemotherapy, who had been through the same sort of situations. I even got physical signs that I was stressed, which, I've mentioned it before, the nerve jumping in your eye to an extent that it would not go away. And it almost went straight away when I went to see the oncologist. And I think the reading and the talking helped. I think going into the oncologist's appointment with questions helped. And I came out of that feeling a lot better. But still, I think the anxiety was still happening really around that time. And it was a kind of another month until I started chemo. And I did go into a bit of an overdrive of practical things to help me through this treatment that I thought was going to be horrendous. And, went into lots of food prep, read lots of practical books. But all that did give me a sense of comfort that I was prepped for it. And that did help me. And of course, I was still continuing conversations with my coach at the time. That's still my coach, really, that was helping me sort of offload a lot of that. And these are small bursts of time. We're talking sort of 4 weeks at a time, but they felt a long time, longer than 4 weeks. And, but broken up by sort of next steps in terms of the cancer treatment. And then chemo started. And I would say that was when I just stopped. And I couldn't, my brain stopped. I couldn't plan anything. I couldn't think about anything. And that's probably part of the chemotherapy. But I actually made myself just stop thinking and actually, go with the flow a little bit, which is not what I tend to do. So I just met with friends, watched some Netflix, although I didn't watch a lot of Netflix, did masses of walking, and tried to be more present, because I couldn't plan the future, trying to make the most of that moment in time. And that's when I really started to look at yoga and meditation. And I did have a little bit of a structure to my day, but not huge. So I'd get up and I'd do some exercises. I would meet friends. I would watch some TV. I would have a lie down at lunchtime, things like that, but not maybe the structure or the routine that I would have had in the past. And that went on for quite a time, really. And I think when I look back now at that was really therapeutic, just stopping. And talking to people. So again, a lot of my friends are coaches. So it would almost naturally, we would have those conversations. So I'm very lucky to have that great support network. But during that time, did do a lot of talking and a lot of reading. And then I had, just after Christmas, I follow Miranda Hart on Instagram, find her very inspiring, makes me laugh, but she also has some great stuff around mental health. And she spoke about sort of self-help books, introduced me to a coach called Martha Beck. And so I started to look at some of her books. From January to March, I started to think, if I was going back to work after Christmas, as normal, would I want to go back to what I have at the moment? And that I started to think, well, maybe I wouldn't really. You know, maybe actually all of this is teaching me that there is something else that I could be doing that would be more fulfilling. And I started to think, I do a lot of delivery to teams, and I started to think, I don't know whether I want to do as much of that. I don't know whether I want to do as much travelling. I love doing the one-to-one coaching. Maybe I just focus on that. And it almost started like a little bit of a dreaming phase of thinking, what could be possible? What could I do that would be more fulfilling? And that was when I started to look at more physical things, but Nordic walking. Thought, you know, possibly in the future there's an opportunity for me to do more active holidays, more challenging adventures. And within that period of time, I created a vision board and started to look at some real exciting possibilities with regard to my career, but also my personal life and some of my hobbies. And I would say that period, and I mean, if you look at something called the change curve, which we do a lot around in my line of work, you can see that I'm starting to come up from the depths of uncertainty into a more accepting phase and starting to think that there is another way forward. And I would say that's lasted really till March. And then weirdly, this self-isolation that's come along has forced me into having the time to do some real mental recovery. So really looking at meditation, yoga and some exercise, but also looking at some practical things around, can I learn some new skills? Can I prepare myself now for when I return to my normal life? And that's led me to start doing nutrition qualifications, looking at more studies around the body and the mind, and I find myself in quite an uplifting phase now, and that's where I am now. And I think that that's going, even doing this today has taught me that, you know, I've learned a lot along the way. And I think some of the lessons have been is that you can't ignore what your body is telling you, and your body is telling you, giving you big signals that it needs to do something. And it's the wonderful thing about mindfulness is that you do take that bit of time out to listen and then think, well, obviously continue along this pathway or this choice is not giving me the right emotional reaction, so maybe I should do something different, or a bit deep. But I think it is about being present. It is about really taking each moment as you can. And it is also about having a bit of a routine, a little bit of structure, and giving yourself some ways of recovery that are comfortable for you. Maybe it is changing your diet, maybe it is exercise, maybe it is your friends and socialising. So I hope that hasn't been a big load of waffle, but it's been good to talk about it, and how this situation, albeit a very stressful and emotional and upsetting situation, something really great will come out of this in the end, and all this will have been worth it. Anyway, speak to you all next week.